Hi everyone, hola a todos, mi nombre es Cristóbal, estoy aquí con mi colega Pau, somos parte del colectivo Babilla y estamos en la llamada de hoy apoyando con interpretación simultánea al inglés y al español para el evento de hoy. So hi everyone, my name is Cristo, I'm here with my colleague Pau. We're part of Babilla Collective and we'll be providing simultaneous interpretation between Spanish and English today. So I'm going to share some instructions in English and Spanish on how to use the feature so you can log in and hear it in your preferred language. Voy a compartir en ambos lenguajes cómo usar la función de interpretación para que puedan participar en su lenguaje preferido. So if you're coming in from a laptop or a personal computer, you see on the bottom right of your Zoom screen a interpretation icon that's like a globe. You can click on that icon and then select English if you would like to listen into the English interpretation whenever someone speaks Spanish on the call, or you can select Spanish if you would like to hear the Spanish interpretation whenever someone hears English on the call. You can switch back and forth at any moment. You can stay on your preferred channel, and we will make sure to switch as necessary so you receive the correct interpretation. There's also a third option to mute the original audio of the call and just listen to the interpreter's voice. If you're coming in from a mobile device, you will see three dots that say more. Then you'll see language interpretation, and then you'll see English or Spanish as your options for the language channels. Para poder accesar la interpretación en Zoom, si vienen en una computadora móvil o una computadora personal, van a ver un icono de globo que dice interpretación y ahí pueden escoger inglés si quieren escuchar la interpretación al inglés cuando se habla español en la llamada o español si quieren escuchar la interpretación al español cuando se habla inglés a la llamada. El cambio pasa automáticamente y la interpretación será simultánea sin interrupción. Si están entrando de un teléfono móvil o una tablet, van a ver tres puntitos que dicen más, luego interpretación del lenguaje y luego pueden escoger su lenguaje preferido. We do want to remind speakers to talk at a moderate pace. We are interpreting live, so speaking a little slower than usual really does help us capture everything you're saying and interpret accordingly. If you're going too fast at any moment, we will put a turtle emoji in the chat to remind you to slow down. Also, for participants, if you're having any issues with interpretation, you can message me, Cristo, or Pau. We'll make sure to have interpreter in our name and we can help you troubleshoot. También queremos recordarle a los exponentes que hablen un poco a un paso moderado, estamos interpretando en vivo, y si hablan a un paso más lento nos ayudan a poder capturar todo adecuadamente. Si en algún momento van muy rápido, vamos a poner un emoji de tortuga en el chat para poder pedirles que vayan más despacio. También a los participantes, si tienen algún problema con la interpretación, pueden escribirme a mí, Cristóbal o Pau. Vamos a tener intérprete en nuestro nombre y podemos ayudar con cualquier problema técnico. Thank you very much and have a great event. Gracias.
My name is Marie Soler, and I'm the Director of Education at Creative Capital. I'm joining you from the Creative Capital office in New York City. I encourage you all to introduce yourselves by placing your names and locations in the chat. It's so exciting to see so many of you coming from so many different places, from Canada, New York, Spain, Italy, Alaska, and even Maine. It's amazing to have all of you here together. Creative Capital supports innovative and adventurous artists across the country through funding, counsel, and career development services. As part of our mission to amplify artists' voices and provide tools and community for artists to thrive, we are pleased to host these online workshops and conversations. We have also launched the Creative Capital Curriculum, which is a series of free bilingual Spanish-English online courses for artist professional development. You can see a link in the chat, and I encourage you all to access this amazing resource, and we welcome institutional memberships from higher education and cultural organizations in supporting this vital resource. If you're interested in becoming a member, please see our education page that was shared in the chat. And in addition, you can learn more, see upcoming artist labs, and subscribe to our newsletter on our website, which you can also access in the chat. I would like to quickly acknowledge that our captioning today and ASL interpretation is provided by IF Consultant. Thank you, Bob and Darlene, for your ASL services, and Sabrina for your captioning services. Spanish interpretation is provided by Colectivo Barisha. Thank you, Cristobal and Pau, for your Spanish interpretation services. Our chat and behind the scenes aspects of the webinar is being facilitated by Livia Huang, Artist Initiatives Associate here at Creative Capital. So many thanks to Livia for all of her work on this program. I have a few housekeeping notes before we begin. This afternoon's workshop is being live captioned. To enable captions, click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen and choose subtitles or full transcript, and they will pop up as a box on your screen within Zoom. For Spanish interpretation, please see the instructions in the chat. And for questions this afternoon, we ask that you please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use the chat to talk with each other. This session will be recorded and be made available to all who registered for the program. We will send you the recording in a couple of weeks. So this afternoon's program, Promoting Projects and Events, is the last in our 3-session series focused on content strategy for artists, promoting yourself and your work. This series empowers artists with the tools they need to get the word out. Our series instructor, Robin Sembalist, will share a mix of best practices, practical tips, and valuable insights. If you missed the first 2 sessions, crafting your elevator pitch and sharing it on Instagram, and promotional writing for professional artists, you can view them by registering for Creative Capital curriculum. Today, in this final session, Robin will teach you how to compose a timeline for creating a promotional narrative that unfolds before, during, and after your events. So I'd like to introduce Robin Sembalist. If you'd like to turn on your camera, Robin. She is a respected journalist, influential Instagrammer, and the former longtime editor of Art News. Robin trains arts professionals to communicate effectively about themselves, their work, and their projects. She teaches writing, social media, public speaking, and other essential skills to clients across the art industry. A faculty member of the School of Visual Arts, a longtime instructor in the Bronx Museum's AIM program, and a popular and beloved coach here at Creative Capital, Robin has built a specialty in career development for artists, leading workshops in schools, residencies, and cultural organizations. I'm so pleased to welcome you back, Robin.
Thank you so much. And thank you for spending time with us this afternoon, everyone. I am just going to jump back into the presentation. And then as you heard, we will do some Q&A at the end. Oops, share screen. Does anyone see something that says Artist Lab 3?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So just a bit about me. As you heard now in my bio, for most of my career, I was a journalist. I was the editor of Art News for many years. I know this says about me, and I wrote putting yourself out there. So they sell Art News in 2014, and I realized that I will never get another job in journalism. And I start the business that we're basically doing right now, except I didn't know about Zoom. Anyway, it was quite a challenge because this was 2014. A lot of people in the art industry did not think that Instagram was going to be important in our business. And beside that, I was a middle-aged editor from print, basically. And even the people that knew and respected me were very doubtful about what I could teach their digital native staff about social media and digital content. So I realized that I had to put myself out there as never before. And as anyone knows who started a consulting business or, came from a supposed power job and started a consulting business knows there's a flip that happens where now you're pitching yourself to the people who used to pitch themselves to you. So awkward, right? So I realized I had to rebrand, and here you see me going out there. I went where no Instagrammer had gone before and became the first featured Instagram at the Frick Collection, and then I developed this iconography or branding, if you will, where I was photographed taking photographs. And I got this headshot where the phone's as big as my face, and I was kind of counseled not to use it, but I thought, no, I want the phone in this picture. And what happened is, since I'm doing an action, as I'll be talking about later, it turned out to be good editorial content, as you can see here for the article about me in ArtNet. So, the other thing that happened when I started to develop my Instagram kind of content strategy of chronicling my art world and so on, I do sometimes appear in the photos, right? You can see if you go to my Instagram or the screen, I turn up in pictures of, maybe I know the people or whatever. But what I feel like is that you can feel my presence from behind the camera because of the perspective and the point of view and the very much the fact that the art is kind of the photos are situated in a place and time. They're not just individual artworks. So that brings us to you. Now, when I started to teach marketing in MFA programs, I remember being told once or twice, don't say the word brand, they don't like that. And I said, the students, meaning the students. And I was like, okay, I'll say message. But there was kind of like this point that, like marketing yourself's not cool type of thing. And you really should be just in the studio doing the work. And why would you have time or, drive to do this marketing. So I just want to say, like, marketing is cool, according to me. There's a long history of creative exhibition promotion, and I just happen to have this Dan Graham invitation card. I think it's from like 1988 or something. And, perhaps now in your studio or in your office, you have a beloved poster from a long closed show, not to mention maybe some swag from a longer ago show. But anyway, swag's outside the scope of the class. Just time, right? So, but the thing is that since I started in this business, there's been a digital paradigm shift, right? So in the past, we had the invitations that came in the mail and the cards and the posters. Then to get coverage, you had to go through the editorial gatekeepers, right? The people that are the editors of the magazine or the writers or they're producing TV shows, or you had to pay to get an advertisement. And then, of course, there's word of mouth and networking. Now we have all of the above, but because of social and digital media, we can now speak directly to the audience. So whereas artists, yes, a couple of generations ago had nothing to do with marketing their show, or writers in marketing their books, or very little to do, only at the kind of tail end. Now everyone is involved in, including the artists and the venues, in creating the content for the websites, the social networks, the email newsletters. We're at a place now where everything you write about your show isn't just sent to an audience of the press, it's on the gallery going apps and the handouts and so on. We have a case where the audience is also making content and distributing content, which becomes very important in social media. And we have the challenge and the luxury that now we can promote projects over years and not just months, right? So instead of someone coming in at the end of it all and writing a press release, you're promoting it starting from 2 years ago by planting seeds and building buzz before you ask people to really pay attention in a more fixed way. So, in other words, I like to call project promotion a production in 2 acts. So these are ones that I did for the Ford Foundation Gallery a long time ago, and I know they're visual art, so it's kind of more obvious, but the point is before and an after. Before, we have the installation happening. We have the art handling team, the gallery team. We have the artist, Nona Fastine, actually here, and Wendy Red Star, featured kind of installing the show and details from the work. Then comes the opening and the curtain rises, right? So now we have the beautiful scenes, the beautifully lit scenes, the installation in the gallery. We have people visiting the show. We have panel discussions. We have spotlights and individual artists and artworks, right? And the whole concept that I keep saying is that basically This whole class is about how to get around saying, come to my show and tell people why, show, project, book, and so on. But we'll come back to that. So what we're going to do here today is that first we're going to do a tune, like a kind of a tune-up. Then we're going to have Act One, which is building buzz and all the way up to the announcement. And then we're going to have Act Two, which is really your Act One if you have a theater piece, for example. And that's when the curtain's up and building momentum. And then we'll briefly stop in the coda and upload and talk about interviews a little bit. So let's start with the tune-up. Now, if we're going to be promoting our content for a couple of years, we want to have some systems to keep it organized so we don't lose time looking for things. And this is especially important if you're collaborating people, because no show is just one person. Even if you're a solo artist, you're working with a team, right? So it's, the more you're collaborating, say that you're MFA students putting the show together, this is especially important, right? You got your calendar, you have different folders, for example, in Google Drive. And my advice is basically to use whatever system you're already using. So if you're in the Dropbox and then you move to Google Drive, just be aware that whatever fits in what you're using is most useful. I do like Google Drive. All right. So we want all these folders for your pictures, for your text, your press materials, and so on. List of tasks, responsibilities, and deadlines. These will kind of become apparent as we're going on. And again, the more you're collaborating, the more important it is to have this. If you're working with a larger venue, some of the tasks will be done theoretically by their departments, but you really don't know these days which departments have time to market you. And that's why we're here. And then some flow charts to help you move the larger tasks along. So now we want to think about having a photo video library. So the first thing we want here is a headshot. So here on the right, we have some examples of headshots. And I like to think of a headshot kind of like, how you go to the museum and you look at the portraits and you can tell so much by the background and what they're holding and what they're wearing and what they're doing and their stance and their pose. Well, that's the way we can think about headshots. So here we see in this series for the Maryland Institute College of Art, we got the nude mood board, we got the sewing machine, we have the materials, we have an expression connecting with the viewer, and the same thing here, right? And my advice is to have all of your pictures in all different horizontal and vertical styles, because once you start showing and being in panels and conferences, people are going to use your headshot in all different ways. And the headshot, again, this could be people's first impression of you. So we wanted to have all the power that it could possibly have. We want to have pictures or videos of the artist in action, whatever you're doing in the studio. You could use this on your website, on your social media, and you need it to get space in articles in the press, as we'll see in a second. Then we want to have, of course, installation views or performance views, pictures of your book. Again, if you're a visual artist, you're going to want to have individual works and details, or the same with music, and video or audio if relevant. And my advice is to start building this out as soon as possible with all of your folders and labels so that later you'll be able to access things easily. The more good pictures you have, or videos in other cases, the more chance you'll get coverage. So here we have a page from Artsy, the online website, and here we have the work of Joel Andriano Merea Soa. And as we can see, these beautiful photos are provided by the studio of the artist, the portrait and the studio views. So this is a kind of beautiful minimal studio, which fits this artist brand because it's an artist who's working in the juncture of fashion and couture and so on. But my larger point is that if you have pictures of you doing a thing, portraits of that reveal or photos that reveal something about you and your work and are also good visuals of high quality, there is more chance that you will get more space or coverage to begin with. Then we want to have our written blurbs that I covered in the last class on promotional writing. So basically we want to have adaptable blurbs, just the same way our picture is adaptable, but different. about you. So you want to have a short bio, might be shorter than even on your website, those kinds that you can kind of adapt even to a sentence. The same thing with your work, kind of have it narrowed down in a way, the essential qualities of your art practice. And we're coming into your project, which is the what and the why. So here's the thing, in the other classes, when I'm talking about defining yourself, right? You got your personal identity, you've got your professional identity, there's what you do, there's your tools and materials, there's your process, and then we come to what does it look like? And what does it feel like to experience? Those are things that I mention always in all the classes, because again, it's kind of like, why is this an artwork and not an article type of thing in some cases, if you know what I mean. So the point is that when we're doing promotion, the why becomes more important because now we're asking people or inviting people to invest their energy in a different way, which might be, to leave their house and go see something, to pay for it, to listen to something, and so on. And that's a completely different kind of engagement on the part of the audience. So we are going to start leaning into the why. And again, in our statement, we're often, well, this is about my research and my investigation and my critique. And we're moving in terms of the intention, and we're moving into the why in our head of why should someone spend their bandwidth in whatever way on my cultural project. So I'm going to come back to this. And then I'm calling them the receipts, as they say, press blurbs from earlier work. Now, this is very important in performance and often in literature. We always see these blurbs kind of woven into the bio, a little bit less featured often in visual arts, and it's there. And I do like this page from Joseph Keckler from his website, which basically has different blurbage from these different critics. And I'm calling it the receipts because it's one thing for an artist to say, oh, I'm absurdist, but it's another thing for the press to come in and say, ridiculously absurdist. Or another thing that you see is people, destroying the boundaries between these different, I don't mean to be flip, but there's a lot of language that's very similar in that. And if a journalist has said such a thing, and you can use that as the receipts, that has a lot of weight sometimes into creating a context for yourself. Grow your email list. So this is hard. It is actually not legal to add people to your list without their permission, but it is widely practiced, as we all know, and I know from all the lists that I'm on. I think getting emails the legal way is obviously the best practice. So you want to have a button on your website, perhaps, or even a pop-up, and I would have it on the first page of the website as well. And you could have a sign-up link in your Instagram, and you can ask people for their cards or emails, and kind of say socially, I'll add you to my list. I do it. And build interest in your list in other ways. And here are just some examples of how people are doing it. Jean Shin has a complete contact page with all the different emails and galleries and social and so on the button. And here we kind of have a more lighthearted one from Miguel Gutierrez. I am doing a lot of things. I want you to know about every single one. Again, just kind of a little call out. Build personal press lists. So one thing that also you can do over time is start to build lists of listings and journalists and media that you can reach out to. So for example, on the left, we see the newsletter from School of Visual Arts, where I'm an instructor. And every day they put out this email that rounds up different projects by students and faculty and alumni. And a lot of people see it, and it's very useful. So that's the kind of thing. Then in the center, we have Glass Tire, which is a publication devoted to Texas visual art, as you can see. And here is some coverage they did of 4 of their artists that were in El Museo del Barrio show here in New York. And my point is that say you're in New York and you're showing in a museum or a gallery, And they might not know about your regional publication like Glass Tire, and they might not know about a culturally specific publication like Remezcla or Art Asia Pacific, and so on. And a lot of those publications do have the writer's name listed, and you can do some research to see who covers the kind of work that you're doing across the board. And then in terms of listings, again, consulates, sometimes those things go out to a lot of people. You can look in advance and they're going to have deadlines for submission and format and so on, so that if you're working again in a smaller team together, that would be someone's project to find out about the listings and then make sure that the information gets sent in the right way. Now we're finally in Act 1, planting seeds and building buzz on Instagram. Now, I'm using Instagram because we already did a class in Instagram, and for most artists at this point now, it's still going to be the easiest way to reach people in this long-term scale for now. Now, these strategies will work for other situations and platforms as well. So consider hashtag and title. Well, the title's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but or maybe not, but I will say that the title is the first impression that you're giving to people. Now, the reason I'm bringing the title in here is because when you start your promotion, if you want your hashtag to be the title, you kind of want to think about that early on. So what I'm recommending is a unique hashtag. If you want a hashtag, which is up to you, and I can answer more in the questions. But if you want a hashtag, here we have Mindy So. Mindy So has a book called Cyber Feminism Index. That's the hashtag. And it's a unique hashtag because if you look up Cyber Feminism Index, that's the only thing you're going to find under this hashtag. Whereas if it had been, say, feminism, there would be all different posts on all different subjects, right? And the same thing over here with Sonia Guignan-Saka, who has 2 books that are also hashtag titles. So here we are with Somewhere We Are Human, right? And we can see again, it's a unique hashtag, and it's an intuitive hashtag because it's the name of the show or the title of the book. And if you kind of invent a hashtag like, art show BKLNY 2025, you're going to find people might not use it so much. So that's why I'm talking about a unique and intuitive hashtag. Now, you do not have to do it. You can call your project whatever you want, but if this is something you're thinking about, you want to think about it at the beginning. And now we are getting ahead of ourselves, but I just want to point out here how in both of these cases, the book becomes a character in the story itself, right? We see how important design is in both of these cases. Now, I'm not saying you have to sit on the floor and balance the book on your head like that Mindy So did over here. But I'm saying that you're seeing this kind of story of bringing, it's not just like marketing, it's kind of like the emergence of the book in the world and the community, so that becomes part of the journey in itself. And it's a very kind of humanistic journey that it's marketing that's more humanistic than kind of like buy the book, which is also fine to do that. All right. Just since we're here, Instagram recommends a max of 3 to 5 hashtags, and the general words really don't work that well. But the keywords in your profile and content do work. So again, if you're using words like feminism or names of different cultures, those work just as well or better than the hashtags. So I would think more about the content than the hashtags for what it's worth. Pinpoint print products. Okay, so this is just something I threw in here because it's important and we want to think about it early. Now, a lot of times when people start this out, they have ideas for beautiful fold outs. Like I just happened to use these ones from the Venice Biennale as examples because there they had just so much time and money and professional teams. So that's just an example of what you can do if you have all of those. But no matter what team you're on, you want to think, do you want a poster? Do you want a postcard? Do you want to send something in the snail mail? Do you even have people's addresses? And of course, a program or a handout. This again depends if you're showing at a kind of film festival they're going to do all this, right? But what's important is your writing. Anyway, back to this. The pros of these is that they're more permanent. People might keep them. But there is expense and labor and logistics and the climate to consider. But whatever your product, like here we have a little handout from EFA Open Studios, even the handout can be a protagonist, and that's, I guess, more kind of the story. Introduce tools, materials, and process. So here we have Simone Lee. But it just says back at work, and Simone is sitting on the floor with a ute taking a large axe, taking a large axe to a large tree trunk. Like, that's a flex, seriously, on all the levels. But my point here, it doesn't need to say, mark your calendars, or maybe we don't even know what it's for, but we're just kind of using this point to plant the seeds to build interest in what we're doing. So clearly, there's some carving going on. Introduce themes, team, and goals. So here we have Dawood Bey, and he's out doing location scouting for a future project, right? And again, no show makes itself, especially one involving photography and film and so on. So right from the beginning here, we're getting introduced to the next work, right? Just kind of like take note, next work. Here's the crew, here are the people. A little bit about, the history based, the goals of the that he has in creating this project and the history. And then again, more of the players, right? So that's why I call it our Act One, even though it's not your theater Act One, because all of these people become the players in creating this cultural production, whatever it is, across genres. Now comes the announcement, which again becomes enhancing the why. Not why did you do it, but why should people go? So when I talk about promotional content, I like to break it down into two categories: informational and experiential, because of what I was just saying, right? Why should people spend their energy and resources in whatever ways to experience your piece? Now, some content might be just information, and some might be more on experience, because we don't want to be overwhelming and put too much content in one post because people won't read it. And then the other thing we have in promotional writing are these calls to action, which could be come to my show, but how many times can you say it? And like I said, we're trying to tell them why, not just like if they're your friends, they'll come, but we're trying to tell all the other people, right? So that's when we get this introduction of what we're calling the second person voice, you. If you remember or can see in the class I did on writing, we have the bio. That's the third person. Robin Sembalist is a person who does this thing. Then we have the statement, which might be, as a former journalist, Robin Sembalist creates things, clay that looks like journalism. I don't know. I made it up. All right. Now we're getting, let's just read this bio. Listen, right? Listen to my new single. That's the you. That's directed to the reader, to the audience, right? So we have very cleverly here, we have Stacey Ryan, and we have the link to where you can listen to the single. Here we have Elizabeth Velasquez. We have the identity signifiers in the bio, right? All of the different things. Wrote a book, buy it, borrow it, listen to it, and so on, right? Those are all calls to action, but there's a turn of phrase to it, right? And what we're going to be what we're promised and what's delivered in the Instagram is, again, all of these reasons of why. Why should you do it? So we're moving back and forth between all of these different things. And I guess I would say nearer to the opening, the calls to action kind of take on a more front seat, one, let's say, where we're starting to push the day of the opening and the events to the top. But the whole prior part of this can go on for months, if not years, where you're situated. Now, this can be, say that you paint landscapes. The work might not begin in the studio. The work begins when you too are location scouting in nature. So when you think about chronicling your projects, you want to think about chronicling in your social all of the different features of this and presenting it not as marketing, but as kind of a creative journey, if I can say that. So now comes the announcement. The big day happens, and everyone's like, okay, this is our big day to tell everyone. So we're going to have a coordinated announcement, usually that's going to be the venue, which, the film center, the theater, the art gallery, and so on, and the creators involved. And there's different ways to do it. So here's Joseph Keckler. We just saw it coming in with announcement day. I am working on a commissioned performance for the Metropolitan Museum. It will take place there in site-specific form, May 9th and 10th. And then we'll continue to develop. Low key, right? It's not the whole press release. It's just kind of like, this is happening, right? And low key, I think low key is great because, again, it allows you to build this buzz and interest without being relentless and tiring out the audience. Now, as it gets closer, that will change. So the most common thing we're going to see is an announcement on social media. Now, I like these from Anderson Ranch. I like the design. You can read it. It looks slightly different from other ones that you see. You got the headshots and so on. And then you have here, you see the tag of Rodney McMillian. Now, for whatever reason, that's the only tag I have here. But so just imagine that there were tags on top of all the people. And as you're scrolling through this Instagram carousel, you can see the tags. That's the way I recommend to do it. Tag people in every picture, put all the tags in the beginning, tag them in the post, and you can tag up to 20 people this way. So again, for a lot of projects, that might be really useful. You might have a graph. If there's more people than you can fit in this graphic, have a front page and then the picture. There's ways to do it. Your emails go out with your press release blurbage. And you're going to change all of your social media bios and website content if necessary. And again, I would kind of have a checklist of things ahead of time because once you do announce your show or program and a press release goes out, you do want to have it in your bio, which we just saw some. Then we have another kind of feature of Instagram that's called collaboration that we're seeing a lot now, which is that up to 6 accounts, it's one post and it goes on the feed of all up to 6 accounts. So that works in a case like this. Here is 92nd Street Y and their dance and evidence dance. So in their announcement, this same text goes on all those feeds. So it's very useful if a dance company, say, has fewer followers than the massive following of 92nd Street Y. Now their followers are connecting with evidence dance too. And right here, we see this second person voice. Get ready for an unforgettable evening. Okay, I'm buying. Tell me more. Join us. Why? For a landmark performance uniting 2 iconic companies, both grounded in rich cultural traditions and renowned for their transformative artistry. Count me in. I'll go. That does sound like something I'd like. All right. And here we have the very clear and useful information that we need. This is the informational part. So again, we see even in this announcement, and it's hard to write this little a lot of times. I think this is a great example. Oh, wait, I missed this part. Don't miss this chance to witness the magic unfold on stage. See you there. I mean, it's magic, right? Come on my magic ride. And that's this idea again of experience to kind of get away from the world around you and everything that's going on and step into this kind of transformative dance experience. And then, however the announcement is, the artist is going to follow through with their own original content, because if people are following your Instagram, once they see the promotional graphic the one time, you can pin it to the top of your profile, but we don't want to keep posting that because it will tire people out. So here's an example of another collaboration between Kinetic Light Dance and Alice Shepard and Laura Lawson. And in this case too, they're showing us a partnering moment, right? This rehearsing moment. And again, why? Because it's a new mixed media repertory program. It has solos. It has part of the newest creation and so on. So again, we're getting this kind of like the main blurbage of what's in it and why it's interesting, combined with this kind of like, well, now we're in this kind of behind the scenes moment, again, to build buzz in a more organic way. All right, now this is a flex, but I'm using it as an example. So this is Odili Donald Odita, and he is painting a mural now, or maybe he's done, in the lobby of MoMA. That's some good content there. But he does it very well. So here you see again this initial post from MoMA, and then he starts with these carousels, and they all have different details showing the process, which is very compelling. So no, not everyone gets to do a public mural in MoMA. But I'm kind of like, use this inspiration to tell the story in a dynamic way, right? Think about what you're bringing to it in terms of the themes and the mood, and not necessarily every ladder and box in a gallery installation, because not so interesting, but maybe you have to be more creative about bringing different visuals in that fit, to bring buzz for your project. And again, the earlier you begin to think about this, right, and think about having all of this content, the hopefully easier it will be. And then, as I said, this happens all the time. I don't know why, but I go to tag an artist and I look them up, and they don't have the show in their bio. It's all right. You can be cool that way. But, I'm like, maximize the power of your event and your impact. You can do it. You can put it in your bio. It's low key, right? So here's Sasha Wurtzel. Now, the first thing is that she has the note, or they have the note, and the Sasha, the note, these go to only people that you follow that follow back, and they're only up for 24 hours. So you do have to, if it's for an event, as we see like 4/9, then we're going to be, maybe posting it every day. And right, so it's a film in Miami Film Festival. Now, I heard yesterday that Instagram is getting rid of some notes. So, but I'm not sure about the notes in the profile. So I do think you should use them for your projects and just keep reposting them near your openings. And then we have here too the different shows. There's a show at ICP, and then we've got the in the Criterion Collection, and then we have the Miami Film Festival and so on. And my point is, flood the zone, get it up there, but in a creative way, so that it looks like organic content. Now, this is super high level, I'm showing you. This is Legacy Russell, director and chief curator of The Kitchen, has a new book out now called Black Meme, but this was the first book, or I think Glitch Feminism. I'm not sure it was the first book. So here we have, this is actually a highlight, and I'm calling it a long-term highlight because, as you may recall, or a highlight is Instagram stories are images and videos that are normally up just 24 hours, unless we can pin them into our profile, as we see here, and they have different cover lines and cover images if we want, and so on. And this was on Legacy's profile for a while. I looked yesterday and it was gone, but it was up for a couple of years. So I'm using this as an example. So these are very pre-planned stories. So each slide in this story, which is planned to become part of the highlight, is telling a different part about the research, because this is a very kind of hard to put into, with all of our projects are hard to blurb, but this one has, it's a couple of passes to kind of get all of the subject matter together, and that's what this particular post is doing. And I'm not going to read it out loud because time, but just to show that these are very art directed and prepared posts that work as a group. And it is doable by, you see museums do it, but you can do it. You can figure this out ahead of time if you storyboard it. And I think it's a really useful way to keep details about a project on your Instagram, because it's your Instagram, so people are more likely to stay on Instagram to see your content. Okay. Curtain up. Act 2, which is your Act 1. After the opening, we're going to have, as I said, installation views, a deeper dive into individual content. We're going to have portraits of as we're going to keep seeing the artist and the team and the players. We're going to see the audience experiencing the show and the event. We're going to share posts that other people have posted. And of course, we're going to have our press coverage, events, and programs, and so on. And I'm just going to show, and then the end of it, but I'm just going to show a little bit of this because of time. Posts on individual works. I do like this one from curator Herb Tam, who's at my Museum of Chinese in America. Again, instead of reposting all the content, learned a lot working on this show. For example, these works were unsold CDs from America become used for new creative projects in China. This is an old tweet from the Met, but it makes a point that I like. Now, I know a lot of people want to thank the writer in the coverage, but I see so many of those, and I just feel like in your main real estate, use the words that are going to make the most impact. So that's going to be a value judgment like great or wonderful, and a turn of phrase like wonderfully macabre, right? Now, that's not a thing that you could write about your own piece, but that's a thing, again, that the press says, right? So we want to be sharing it on social media. Use it again, don't miss the show that occasionally we have the don't miss, right? That the Wall Street Journal called wonderfully macabre. Put it on your website, put it in your emails, and so on. This is a thing, these are also older slides, but they make such a beautiful point. So here's Micheline Thomas, who is a well-known artist who could just be sharing or having an assistant sharing all the different announcements from the projects. And these are from a few years ago. But they have a very beautiful strategy, which is the artist connecting with her own work, right? They're not selfies. They're not pictures you'd see necessarily in a magazine, like a formal portrait. And in each case, she's really activating the space and telling people one new detail about the work. And again, I think that, it just kind of to illustrate the strategy of giving people ways to look at your work instead of telling people how to look at it. And then we have reels, which are now up to 3 minutes, even though people only watch the first few seconds. And you can use those for casual and formal promotional material. So this is Stephanie Herdick, who is a curator at the Met, who has a Sargent show coming up. Here we see Madam X, her profile, and of the reels, which are kind of her own individual content. In this case, they're showing negative reviews of a different Sargent painting with a Lizzo song. Anyway, just making the point. Of course, we want to be monitoring and sharing user-generated content if anyone is tagging us or our project. Make sharing easy by putting your hashtags and Instagram handles on handouts, program, and wall text. This is just one example from the Brooklyn Artists Exhibition. And now a very brief discussion of panel discussions and media interviews, which are a series of elevator pitches. Now, as I've kind of said earlier and in the other classes, what we're trying to get are summaries of a couple things. Who are we? What do we make? What's our project? And then other things that people are probably going to ask. The genesis, the process, and the intention. How did you come up with it? How did you do it? What's in it for us type of thing. And again, just to review this, we have the essential qualities and what makes it distinctive from other art cultural productions in our space. And again, this informational and experiential content. And what I want to say about this is that a lot of times artists will get the first part of the pitch all short, and then you say, how do you do it? And we get, more of the monologue type of thing. So I think it's really good to prepare specific examples that prove each one of your points. So imagine the interviewer saying, like what? After everything you say, and be ready with specific details, right? Because you can say, my work is absurd. Now, here's a case where you can't bring in necessarily, oh, well, National Absurdism Weekly said my work was wonderfully absurd. Like, we can't do that here. So we have to point to kind of a character or a detail in the work that looks absurd in some way, or maybe the colors don't match, whatever it is, form, content, whatever, we want to have a kind of a proof for that. And all the way through, we're keeping these why things in mind. Like, what is it doesn't have to be everything, and it shouldn't. It should be the most essential and intriguing things, thinking from the audience point of view. Let interviewer drive convo. I kind of just said this. Just keep your answers short and on point. Make sure to breathe and pause. All right. After you say the thing, don't feel the need to fill the quiet moments. Let them get their questions out, and whether you're on a podcast or with a journalist or so on. And finally, follow up and digital tune-up, right? So again, this depends if you have a book out or a show that closed, but you're going to have to go in and update all the bios to reflect whatever the moment is. Update your bio to add your project if you need to on your website, professional sites, alumni databases. Put those shows of your project, photos of your project on your website and your press coverage on your website. Update your CV everywhere and send notes of thanks and follow up when appropriate. And finally, even though I gave you all these things to do, it's all good, right? This is kind of like a large menu that you can pick and choose from. And if you find it too painful or disruptive to your work, it's okay. Be flexible and with your own concept of success and do what works for you. And in the end, as I like to say, be your best self and have fun. Oh, and the end. But here we have my Instagram and my email sign up list on my website.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was so informative. We have quite a few questions that I'd like to share with you. And I wanted to begin with kind of a grouping of practical questions that our participants have asked. So how old can a headshot be?
It depends. That's a good question. It depends if you changed your look. Honestly.
That's a great answer. And then how long you had mentioned that on Instagram, there's about 3-minute videos, but people only watch for a few seconds, really. But how long do you think video clips should be?
That's another good question. I know this is annoying. As long as the content requires. So most of them should be short if you want people to watch them. It's like having a cocktail party and putting out small bites. The 3-minute video might be more like the deep dish stew at the cocktail, but I don't know, you could freeze it. All right, enough with the food, Robin. So my point is mostly short.
Mostly short, great. And then another practical question in terms of promotional content, when is it appropriate or most useful to use first person?
Good question. So you do see press release. So first you see first person in the artist statement, which if we say that the bio is the one, right? So the bio is the one that you're sending out for panels and to journalists, but then we have a longer statement with more of our philosophy type of thing, right? And that I talked about that in the last class. If the press release is coming from the artist, I guess it could be in the first person, but I would be more likely to just put a quote in, if it's a personal letter. But usually the content is coming out from a venue and a creator together. So now on social media, yes, in the first person, right? I'm taking my book on tour. I'm in the place I wrote my book about, like that, I would say.
Great, thank you. And then this is a really discipline specific, but I think it can be applied to other disciplines as well. How do you build a journey when it is a film which does not have a clear ending, meaning you're not sure when screen dates are happening or if you're in post-production?
So I think that's a case where you're really better off with the kind of like slow organic building where you've picked certain visual themes. And I think this is what, when you're promoting projects in long term, whether they're books or films or art shows or theater pieces, there's certain visual themes that might reemerge. Or maybe if it's a nonfiction film, obviously there's going to be themes. And if there's a fictional film, then it's going to be family, or there's going to be some kind of thematic elements or behind the scenes. And I would just keep posting that and building interest and making sure people have a place, to get your emails, and just building on that visibility in the meantime.
That's really helpful for momentum. Another question that I think is really thoughtful is, should authenticity drive the content? And they say, I've come across content which is staged to support a particular narrative or brand.
I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Should authenticity drive the content?
If it's your best self, I mean, I think people prefer authentic content, especially in the creative space that we're in, right? We're in a field that prizes originality. So it would seem weird unless it was self-conscious to try and not be authentic. But it has to be authentic in a way that's not just, oh, this is me being authentic, but in a way that's using the humanism of the authenticity to give a signal of why the art production of the authentic person would be interesting.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. There's a question around timelines and sending multiple press releases. So can an artist do multiple press releases, such as a save the date and then an announcement closer to the date? And when is an appropriate time to launch that announcement?
Good question. All right. So it depends how far ahead you are. I don't know if it's necessary, for a gallery show per se to be saving the date, maybe for a week-long run in a theater type of thing. Then you can send out the announcement at the same day everyone else does. Now, that's going to depend on the genre, on if you're working in an institution or a gallery or theater, but usually that's going to have to be at least a month before, so that the press can make their coverage. If it's for print, you're talking 6 months, but we're not dealing so much with print now. But you still, maybe a month to 6 weeks. Now, what many people do is that they'll send out another email during the show, which is good, but that has to be it doesn't have to be. It's kind of better if that's the email that says, that's where you would quote the coverage and talk about any past programs. And that's why it's so important to have programming. I get it, depending on the genre that you're working in, if you can have a chance to have a reading or a book signing or, anything like that, that's a separate programming that allows you to promote your whole event all over again to more people. So you can't do programming just to do visibility. It has to fit, but it's still a great strategy.
Thank you, Robin. We have time just for one more question. And the question is specifically for visual arts, but I think it can be extended to other disciplines as well. But how might you balance showing visual art without showing everything prior to the show?
Good idea. I don't think it is good to show everything. I think details, showing the work from an angle, you could show yourself making the work, show the materials, show your mood board, show details of creation of different parts of it, type of thing. Yeah, and leave the reveal for after.
That's great advice. And similarly for dance, it could just be, do you have advice for dance or books or anything else that interdisciplinary artists might think about?
I think for books, there's ways to kind of for dance, you can definitely show rehearsal and slow-mo, time lapse. You get that good camera in your studio, you can do a lot of different footage. And for books, I think there's also, I think you have to be more creative about ways to showcase text, and maybe there's some spoken word and there's some written word and there's some type stuff happening, and there's a, kind of a larger story about who you are around the book, and that the book itself becomes the character.
Thank you so much, Robin, as always, for these invaluable tools and insights. We're so grateful to all of you for joining this Artist Lab and being part of the Creative Capital community. I look forward to welcoming you to our next Artist Lab on creating collaborative and interdisciplinary practices on May 9th. And please keep an eye out on our website and newsletter for future Artist Labs, new course offerings, and future artist opportunities. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you everyone for coming, and hope to see you in the next class.